We apologize for interrupting your doom scrolling. Now, for some positive leftist news.
Hey everyone, couldn't get a green screen to work, so I'm just going to put a little thingy over in the corner. Welcome to Positive Leftist News, the beacon of hope in these turbulent times. I'm Tristan Johnson, creator of Step Back at stepbackhistory.com and the co-host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens. As a longtime editor of this show, I'm excited to host the show for the first time, bringing you stories of resilience and solidarity from around the world. This month, witness a monumental 300,000-strong march for Palestine in Washington, D.C., Jewish activists demanding a Gaza ceasefire at the Statue of Liberty, and Indigenous groups challenging Israeli weapon shipments. We're also covering landmark labor victories and the fight for reproductive rights in Ohio. Stay tuned as we explore these inspiring tales of collective action and change. Let's dive into the world of positive leftist news. Massive global demonstrations for Palestine have continued daily this month with no signs of slowing down. As the US is the linchpin in the Israeli occupation, it is hugely significant that over 300,000 protesters took to the streets in Washington, D.C. in the largest solidarity demonstration for Palestine in American history. Organized by diverse Palestinian, Arab, and anti-imperialist groups, the rally called for an immediate Gaza ceasefire, decrying the ongoing genocide in Gaza, an end to the alliance and funding between the US and Israel, and marched to the White House chanting, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," and "Ceasefire now." Despite facing persecution, including investigations into pro-Palestine groups and doxing of supporters, the solidarity and resistance of the demonstrators was steadfast. Speakers emphasized the parallels to historic movements like the struggle against South African apartheid, despite the US and Israeli government's support for the South African government at the time. Brian Becker, executive director of the Answer Coalition, said, 40 years ago today this month, thousands of people came together in Washington, D.C. to say that the racist, fascist apartheid regime in South Africa must fall. And we will help it fall. And within a few years, it did fall. We make the change. The change comes from us. And right now, sisters and brothers, we are sending a message. A very strong message to Joe Biden. If you stand with genocide, we hold you guilty of genocide. Jewish activists have been coming out in full force this month to support a ceasefire and Palestinian liberation, highlighting just a few actions. Hundreds of Jewish activists from the group Jewish Voice for Peace occupied New York's Statue of Liberty, demanding an end to Israel's genocidal bombardment of civilians in Gaza and calling for a ceasefire. They stood armed with banners and black t-shirts emblazoned with the slogans, "Jews demand ceasefire now, not in our name, the whole world is watching, and Palestinians should be free." This demonstration was part of a series of protests across the US, including gatherings in Washington, D.C., the occupation of Grand Central Station in Manhattan, and the shutting down of the Brooklyn Bridge, all advocating for an immediate end to the conflict and condemning US support for Israel. Jewish community members also occupied Union Station in Toronto, demanding a ceasefire and once again saying, "Not in our name." The action was organized by the Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition and included the Palestinian Youth Movement. These activists poke a massive hole in the rhetoric used to justify Israel's actions and expose more people to anti-Zionist arguments, both incredibly important feats. Activists from across the world are disrupting military cargo ships bound for Israel. At the Tacoma, Washington port, Indigenous protesters used a canoe to block the weapons container ship. The Cape Orlando, set to carry weapons to Israel, faced delays in Oakland, California, with protesters disrupting its departure. Meanwhile, dock workers in Barcelona, Spain, refused to handle cargo ships carrying war materials to protect civilians, emphasizing their commitment to defending human rights and calling for an immediate ceasefire. In yet another demonstration near St. Charles, Missouri, protesters affiliated with We We Are Dissenters shut down a Boeing factory, stating, "Congress will not stop the bombs, so we will." These breathtaking acts of anti-imperialist solidarity are exactly what needs to happen. Honduras recalled its ambassador to Israel, Roberto Martinez, over the serious humanitarian situation facing Palestinians in Gaza. Bolivia's government already severed diplomatic ties, accusing Israel of carrying out crimes against humanity. Chile and Colombia also recalled their ambassadors. Honduran Foreign Minister Eduardo Enrique Reina told the Associated Press that recalling the ambassador was a way to draw attention to the plight of the people of Gaza. It's a position to say, in a way, that the situation of the innocent population concerns us. Activists shut down BlackRock headquarters for investing over $33 billion in Israel's genocidal war machine. BlackRock is a New York City-based investment company that has investments in Israel and death profiteers such as Lockheed Martin, RTX, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and General Dynamics, whose weapons arm the Israeli war machine. Its CEO, Larry Fink, is also a loud supporter of the apartheid regime in Israel. Fink called the Biden administration's deployment of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier to the region a spectacular statement by the United States. The protesters are demanding BlackRock end its complicity in Israel's genocidal violence against Palestinians. Answer Coalition Executive Director Brian Becker said, "We are joining people from across the globe in disrupting business as usual for companies like BlackRock. Israel's genocide in Gaza and the day-to-day oppression of Israel's apartheid regime is enabled by massive corporations like BlackRock that rake in huge profits while Palestinians suffer and die. If there ever was proof that the profit motive is a terrible way to organize an economy, the military-industrial complex is it." Over the course of just 1 week, over 16 million gallons of fuel were removed from the US Navy's underground Red Hill facility, which sits 100 feet above the sole source aquifer in Oahu, Hawaii. This endeavor, initiated on October 16th, aims to drain 104 million gallons from the underground tanks responsible for a 2021 incident that contaminated the water supply for 93,000 individuals near Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam. The defueling phase is anticipated to conclude by January 19th, 2024, with further measures to remove residual fuel expected to be finished by spring. These efforts are crucial in fulfilling Hawaii's demand to shut down the Red Hill facility. America's giant naval gas station in the Pacific just got a little bit less full, thanks to the tireless efforts of Indigenous Hawaiian activists. This is a major step forward and a testament to the power of Indigenous organizing and resistance. A new website has launched which documents land back movement cases, tracking the return of Indigenous land to Indigenous owners. The site, set up by University Distinguished Professor at KU, Sarah Deer, alongside research and mapping specialist Ward Lyles, uses ArcGIS to map instances where landowners have returned property to the original Indigenous owners across North America. This resource aims to provide information, legal guidance, and connections for those interested in facilitating land return. The site, regularly updated, has already cataloged over 90 incidents of land return by private landowners, churches, municipalities, and others to Indigenous nations. Lyles said, "Given the well-documented history of land theft, whether through violence, deception, and swindling, legal manipulation, economic bullying, or other means, we need to face the reality that most property owners in the US have control of property with an undeniably tainted title." One beauty of this project is that each of the individual stories of land return offers a message of hope and healing in spite of the work of land return being contentious and complex. And now, a glorious strike win recap. We gleefully report that not only did SAG-AFTRA win a 3-year contract, US auto workers, California fast food workers, UPS workers, and Kaiser workers all came out victorious, claiming significant gains including pay raises and greater protections. Say it with me now. The workers, united, will never be defeated. After years of organizing efforts, the visual effects workers at DNEG Vancouver have formed a union through IATSE, the International Alliance of Theatre Stage Employees. The workers will now be part of the newly established IATSE Local 402, dedicated to VFX workers in British Columbia. The unionization success at DNEG Vancouver was prompted partly by the DNEG management slashing pay and proposing loans to employees instead of salaries. Why the boss bosses thought they could get away with something so brazen, who can say? This absurd proposal, of course, led to significant employee dissatisfaction, which IATSE leveraged, advocating the necessity of a union for workers' benefits. The unionization aims to address various concerns and demands, including transparency in decisions affecting daily work, better working conditions, improved benefits, industry sustainability, access to legal counsel, protection from unjust layoffs, and solidarity across the Canadian VFX industry. We did it, IATSE told workers in a letter announcing the win. The best way for us to improve our working conditions is by working together. Entertainment and media workers are on a roll. Striking garment workers in Bangladesh have rejected the proposed minimum wage of 12,500 taka, demanding a starting pay of 25,000 taka instead. The current starting wage is 8,000 taka, and even with the new proposed wages, pay would still be notably lower compared to other countries like India, Cambodia, Vietnam, China, Indonesia, and even Pakistan. The Center for Policy Dialogue highlighted that the current proposed wage doesn't meet the basic expenses required for a family of four and urged for a reconsideration of the minimum wage. Thousands of workers demonstrated for 12 days straight, shutting down 500 factories amid the unrest. And union leaders are threatening even tougher demonstrations if demands are not met. The implications of this strike are huge, considering that 85% of Bangladesh's exports are apparel. If these workers can win, and they likely will, the ripple effect would raise the standard of living for tens of thousands of workers and their families. All power to the workers. This month, around 420,000 public sector workers in Quebec, Canada, took part in a series of one-day strikes seeking higher wages to match inflation. This action caused disruptions in schools, healthcare, and social services. The major unions coalition in the mostly French-speaking province warned of an unlimited general strike if an agreement isn't reached soon. The Quebec government proposed a 10% salary increase over 5 years and a one-time payment of 1,000 Canadian dollars per worker, which was deemed insulting and offensive by the coalition. The unions, part of the Common Front, argue that failing to address the rising cost of living would effectively reduce workers' incomes. They demand wage increases 2 or 3 points higher than the current inflation rate, which was recently slowed to 3.8% from a peak of 8.1% in June of 2022. The Quebec government would do well to understand that one-day strikes are just a taste of the power workers wield. The UN General Assembly has, for the 31st time, voted overwhelmingly in favor of ending the American-enforced economic and financial blockade on Cuba. 187 countries voted in favor of the motion. Only 2 countries voted against it, which were, you guessed it, the United States and Israel. Speeches by UN representatives praised Cuba for providing their countries with the needed doctors and other medical assistance through the world-renowned Henry Reeve International Brigades, and for training their doctors and health workers free of charge at the Latin American School of Medicine. Many representatives said that without Cuba's assistance, many of lives would have been lost. Imagine what Cuba, a country that demonstrates solidarity for the world's oppressed peoples, would be able to accomplish were it not for the blockade. America knows this, which is why it and its lapdog Israel are bent on maintaining the status quo. But as viewers of this channel know, American hegemony is not long for this world. Long live the Cuban Revolution. The day when the revolution will have outlasted the American world order gets closer every day. In a step forward for LGBTQ+ rights in Japan, the Supreme Court has ruled that requiring transgender people to undergo sterilization in order to legally change their gender identity is unconstitutional. Though Japanese lawmakers have been slow to expand LGBTQ+ rights, this ruling came as part of a recent swell of popular support and court rulings for gender and sexual minorities, including several rulings that the country's ban on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. Transgender people in Japan must still undergo transition surgery in order to legally register as the gender for which they identify, but recent rulings and grassroots movements have given hope to the queer community, and as long as they keep pushing alongside allies, there's a good reason to believe that Japan will become a place where LGBTQ+ people can live free and authentic lives. On Election Day in Ohio, 57% of voters did so in support of a constitutional amendment to enshrine the right to abortion and contraception in the state's constitution. Ohioans United for Reproductive Rights, a coalition of 25 groups, formed to win passage of the amendment, collected over 410,000 signatures, far over the 413,000 required to put the initiative on the ballot. Close to 500,000 were deemed valid by the state, which did all it could to undermine the grassroots effort to expand reproductive rights. Right-wing organizations ran deceptive ads that lied about the consequences of greater access to abortion. State officials used misleading terms like late-term abortions and unborn child leading up to the vote. Their feeble efforts to stop the will of the people failed. This vote reflects the will of the majority to defend reproductive freedom. Boosted by the Ohio win, abortion access advocates are planning ballot initiatives in more states. Protests erupted across Panama against the approval of a copper mining contract granted to the Canadian company First Quantum Materials, with activists chanting, "Down with the Venta Patrias," "No to the mining contract," and "Stop destroying our lands." The multi-billion-dollar concession contract, which is reportedly the largest private investment in Panama's history, grants FQM a 20-year concession for the Cobre Panama, located in the Panama jungle on the Caribbean coast, the country's largest copper mine. The terms that have drawn condemnation are the lack of transparency and the insufficient public consultation, as well as the threats to the environment, the rights of Indigenous people, and the nation's sovereignty. Activists have taken to the streets in swaths across the country. Protesters blockaded roads, including the Inter-American Highway that passes through the country. The Association of Teachers of the Republic of Panama declared a strike. Fernando Abrego, a teacher, said, "We are going to remain in the streets." The government decided to be confrontational by quickly and expeditiously approving a contract that they knew was rejected by the population. The Association of Doctors, Dentists, and Related Professionals of the Social Security Fund called upon all other medical unions to forge a united position against mining, denouncing Law 406 as constituting a robbery of the natural riches of Panama and a danger to the environment and water sources, and consequently the guarantee of the health of the population. In addition to the call for the repeal of the contract with FQM, the National Union of Workers of Construction and Similar Industries has also demanded that a national referendum be held on the Cobre Panama mine. Saul Mendez, the general secretary, said, "The people are in the streets in defense of sovereignty, in the face of a contract that cedes self-determination by devastating the environment in order to steal resources." Comrades, if you have good news from the current month, please send your stories to mexi@protonmail.com. Thank you to Javi for the positive news jams. Thank you to Cosmo for the positive news background. Thank you to Mexi, Catherine, and Jacob for scriptwriting and production. And thank you to me for editing this video. And also to me again for hosting this one. If you'd like to support the show, please go to patreon.com/positiveleftistnews, or you can give us a one-time tip or donation via PayPal. The link is in the description box below.